Hello, book connectors and music lovers. Welcome back to the Book Connection or Ms. Music. Visitors, should you happen upon the channel, feel free to join us. We'd love to have you here. Hello, book connectors and music lovers as well. Welcome back to either the Book Connection or Ms. Music, both channels here on YouTube, hosted by me, Blue-Eyed Black Devil. Well, I am here with the third installment of the Billy Joel story. Now, guess what happened? I cannot believe I did this, but then again, I should. I recorded this entire video and forgot to hit record. I meant I was going to have it up before 12:01 a.m. Sunday morning, but it looks like it was all in vain, because I had to, when I went to play it back and realized I hadn't recorded anything, I was mad. Okay, but anyway, I'm back, like I said, with the third installment of Billy Joel's story. So here I go. So when last we spoke, Billy and Christy Brinkley, his second wife, they had not gotten a divorce, but they were, I guess you would say, teetering on that happening to them, to their marriage, so to speak. So that's where we'll pick up with part 3. Now, he and Christy are married, and Billy is going on writing, recording, performing, selling out shows and things. But Christy, I guess, is the one who notices it. First off, she notices that Billy's manager, Frank Weber, who is the brother of Billy's first wife, Elizabeth Weber, when they got a divorce and Elizabeth was trying to get more than Billy felt she deserved from the marriage, her brother Frank sides with Billy. And Billy's like, now, if you are going against your own blood, maybe, I might need to pay more attention there. And so he just kept Frank Weber on as his manager. Well, come to find out, Frank was, just say this, he took Billy to the cleaners and I guess tried to leave him there. Billy eventually finds out that he owes the IRS a whopping $5.5 million. $5,500,000. All because he trusted his former brother-in-law. This man had speaking of Frank now, he had a bad gambling habit, and he was just buying, we'll just say like horses. I know one time he had bought some horses, or he told Billy that he had invested in some horses. Christy was the one that was trying to bring it to Billy's attention. She was like, they went somewhere one time. She said, why is he flying private jets and we're flying commercial? You're the entertainer. Why are we going commercial and he's flying private? Billy's response to Christy was, that's my friend, and you don't talk about my friend. So, she didn't say anything else for a little while, but she was still noticing things. She's just, I guess, making mental notes and committing it to memory. So eventually, when he finds out he's this far in debt to the IRS, he's like, how can this be? I'm on top of my game. I'm selling out arenas around the world. And how is this humanly possible? And when Christy could have said, I told you so, I guess she just didn't say anything. What else was it for her to say if it wasn't that? Because it was all on paper in black and white now. And so he goes, some of the stuff he would do, like one time, Frank had bought some horses. Now, if the horses, say if one was entered in the Kentucky Derby, if the horse won, Frank would say that it was his horse. He bought it with his personal money. But if the horse was too old or, I don't know, whatever else that could happen, then all of a sudden that horse was Billy's, and Billy would be responsible for the care of the horse. He would do all kinds of little tricks like that, or if Billy questioned something, he might try to give him a gift, actually, that he probably used. It wasn't no probably. They did eventually find out some of the things that Frank would give him in the form of a gift was really bought with Billy's own money. So, obviously, Billy sued Frank. Frank countersued. Their lawyers, Billy's team of lawyers and Frank's team of lawyers, they battled. This went on for years. Eventually, Billy and his lawyer just walked off. They threw their hands up, threw in the towel, only for the judge to come back and side with Billy. He wasn't going to get all of it back, but he did. I think that man was supposed to pay Billy like 3/4, maybe it was half. A half to 3/4 what he owed. Do you know what Billy got out of that? 1/10 of whatever it was the judge said that he owed Billy. 1/10. All right, several years later, Billy runs into Frank somewhere. I think they were leaving a restaurant, and he said Frank looked like he was scared, because Billy used to box growing up. He took boxing lessons, and that man knew that. He was just, I think Billy won a lot of them or something, but even though Billy wasn't a boxer, he still should have been scared. But Billy just spoke, and they shook hands, and that's how that ended. He said he just couldn't live, hating this man for the rest of their lives. They don't have to be in each other's lives. But, if he see him, he will speak, I guess. All right, that was Frank. Went on. All right, he was one of the problems in the relationship with Christy. See, and Frank might have been the culprit, but it just spiraled. Because Billy and Christy, they have their oldest daughter, Alexa Ray. And they both like to spend as much time as possible. In part 2, I told you, whenever he had to travel, they went with him, or she probably went along with Christy when Christy had to do some shoots here and there, I don't know. But they did try to stay together as much as possible. Well, one of the bad things about all of that other stuff between Billy and the manager or former manager is that Billy, he wanted to take some time off anyway. Had all of this stuff never happened, Billy had planned to be out for, I think it was a couple of years. He was just going to hang around the house. But when all of this came out, he was forced to go back out on the road. He was not going to record an album. He was not going to tour. He was just going to stay around the house and be a father and a husband. But after things fell through the way they did, against his better judgment, he had to go back out on the road. And he really hated that. He really hated not being there for his daughter, especially during that age. I think Alexa Ray was 4 at the time. And I think she was about, 6, maybe 7? By the time he got back home, I know that she was 8 when they got a divorce. Christy was at a place in her career where she could take time off, and she did. But Billy was on the road. By this time, Alexa was in school, so it wasn't like they could just pick up and leave because they both wanted her to be grounded. They didn't want her just jet-setting all over the world. All right, so he ended up on the road. Well, now he's drinking more than he usually do. He usually does. And it's becoming a problem within the marriage. This goes on, and I don't know. He had, after one night of drinking or whenever it was, she threatened to not let Alexa see him. I believe that sobered him up right quick, like, or for that time anyway. He almost became unhinged, because you have to remember, Billy's father, even before his parents divorced, he wasn't there anyway. And when he was there, he was very, very, very distant and cold towards Billy. Now, if his father and his mother had any time, if y'all hear something in the background, please try to ignore it. I don't know. This time of night, while my daughter's in here blowing her hair dry. But anyway, if there were any kinder or gentler moments between Billy's parents, he himself never saw them. All he ever saw of his dad was he was already kind of grumpy and just, I don't know what all you could call it. But as well as he played the piano and as much as he loved to play the piano, when Billy was a kid and the man was there and he played, he always walked away colder and more bitter than he was before he played. So when Christy threatened him with not seeing Alexa, he was like, don't you ever. He said, look, you can call me every name in the book. Call me anything you want to, but the one thing you will not do is deny me my right to see my child. Now, I grew up without a father, and then you're telling me that you're going to deny me the right to see my child? Are you out of your effing mind? Well, I think she never did that one again. But the alcoholism didn't get any better. I don't know if it did get worse, because I think Billy Joel ended up having 3 car accidents within like 18 months. The first 2 were just 6 months apart, and each wreck was a little worse than the one before. And the police came to the scenes, and they would take down the information, write up a report. And I think Billy, he paid for some damage he did to some 94-year-old lady's home. She was like, I'm 94 years old, I still drive, and I have yet to have a wreck. He knocked her flower bushes or something down, and I think he hit the mailbox. Either way it goes, he paid for it and just went on. He never went to jail about it. for all of his drinking, but it got so bad by the time he had that third car accident, he and Christy were already on the brink of divorce. And so she made a statement, I guess, to the press that she was saddened to hear about the car accident, and she just hopes that Billy, will stop drinking for a lot of reasons, but the main reason is because, I don't want him in the car with our daughter and something happens. And she said something about, maybe we need to look into getting her driven. We need to look into getting a chauffeur. So he can, the chauffeur can take Alexa or bring Alexa from Billy. I don't want anything to happen to either one of them. And I know Billy doesn't want anything to happen to his daughter. And so she made that. I don't think Billy appreciated it publicly, but I think it got his attention. Another thing that happened as a result of him and that drinking was that he had gone out on tour with Elton John. Was like, they were the headliners, but somewhere along the way they picked up U2. And they did a few shows with both of those acts. Well, Billy and his drinking got to be way out of hand. When he wasn't wrecking, he was just hungover and couldn't do anything or didn't. And then sometimes when he went on stage, he would overtalk or overplay, or it just got to be a mess. And then, it talked about how, like, sometimes Elton would call Billy or his manager and be like, "What? We're going to tell me what's wrong with my boy. We got to get him straightened out and stuff." It all started out where I really believe Elton was calling out of concern, because Elton, if you don't know, Elton had issues with drugs. I'm not sure about the alcohol, but I do remember several times about hearing about him having issues with drugs. I do think it was alcohol, but I'm not sure, so don't hold me to that one. But this was, a decade or go longer, before Billy. So when Elton was calling about Billy and talking to Billy, it wasn't him just trying to be mean or messy. It was to get him, look, you got to get your act together. We got money to be made here and stuff. But Billy did end up costing them money. Eventually, Elton got fed up with Billy, just overdoing it. I guess it must have been consecutive nights at a time. They were having to reschedule and postpone, and on occasion they ended up canceling things. Then Elton got mad at Billy because of Billy's drinking and all that stuff. And then Billy got mad at Elton because he felt like Elton should not have continued touring until he was able to go back on the road. Eventually, they hashed it out, and whatever happens, they were able to complete said tour. I don't know if they speak or not. Now, I don't really know if they had much of a relationship before they went out on tour, but I do know that that's what it was, his drinking and stuff. Now, I don't know if he ever really went to rehab, because, he says a lot of times you see these people and they're always talking about, going to Alcoholics Anonymous or AA, and they go out their way and they always say this and that. Billy said that just did not work for him, but he does not discount when other people say stuff because apparently it works for somebody. They're still in business. He says, but I just, it wasn't a cold turkey. He didn't just stop altogether. Or, as a matter of fact, at the time this book was written, he had stopped all of the, what is hard liquor? I don't know what that is, but it says that he stopped all of the hard liquor, but on occasion he may have a glass of wine. And he says, it started out, I may have a glass of wine in the afternoon. Then I may have another one later on in the day. And then I'll have one at night. So I guess he may have, I don't know, 1 drink a day or 2 drinks a day or whatever. But it says that he cut out all of the hard liquor. Too bad that this didn't happen before he and Christy divorced. He went on and dated at least 2 other women. I hadn't heard of either one of them. That first lady, her name was Carolyn Beasley, I think. And she was in the music field, music industry. At the time she met Billy Joel, he was still married to Christy, although they weren't on the best of terms. I guess they were still living as man and wife. And she was working with Janet Jackson. She was on tour doing something with Janet. But according to Billy, he did not start dating this lady until after he and Christy had completely divorced. But someone in Billy's camp got to Christy and told her Billy got hurt. I think some sort of accident. He got hurt. So when he should have been on his way home, he ended up at the hospital. And he ended up actually staying in the hospital. So somebody in his camp went and told Christy that the reason he wasn't home is because he was seeing this lady. And Christy, I guess had reached her end. She's like, screw that, I'm gone. She didn't even try to talk to Billy to hear his side. Even after she found out that, maybe he wasn't with her then. Obviously, he had the accident, but, maybe there still is something there. All right, so Christy starts to date this man who will become her second husband. They were in a skiing accident in Telluride, Colorado. When Billy finds out, although they are not on the best of terms, he stops everything and he goes and brings Christy and their daughter Alexa Ray back home. But Christy and her mother and whoever else was there to help them, he said they just walked around and whispered all the time. And he said, no, they weren't on the best of terms, but he was willing to talk and hear her out to get, her understanding, blah, blah, blah. But the way they kept whispering and trying to make sure doors are closed and this, that, and the other, he got fed up and he left. And I don't blame him. You in your own house and you feel the need to whisper and all that stuff. I don't know. But, so that's when they actually ended up getting divorced. So if you ask me, it sounds like his drinking and trusting the wrong people or person in this case, because it cost him, money. And then even after all of that stuff happened between him and Frank, Jerry, no. Some man named Paul was a good friend to Billy. And he was talking to Billy and saying something about Jerry Seinfeld was looking to buy a house or something, and he just couldn't find anything that was satisfactory. So Billy offered his house. So Jerry comes over and he walks through, then he calls his wife, not Billy, Jerry calls his wife to come over and look at the house. She liked it, and he was like, okay, how much do you want? Billy supposedly just pulled a number out of the air and said, okay, 32 million. Yeah, it was 32 million. And Jerry was like, okay. He couldn't believe it. I wouldn't have believed it either, but yeah, he bought a house from Billy Joel. So Billy goes back out on the road after he and Christy divorced. That mess about the lawsuits and stuff regarding his former manager, all of that is behind him. He released an album. When all of that was going on, he found out he had to go back to work and then go on tour. Well, you know it, that was one of the best albums he ever recorded. It is called Stormfront. That album released 7 successful songs off of it. All of them charted. Then, so he had to go out and do all of that. And by the time he got through promoting that album, that's when his marriage fell apart. Now he's footloose and fancy free. Somebody was like, Billy's just one of these people that's just always had to have a lady in his life. And so he starts to date that Carolyn lady after he and Christy got a divorce, and they were together for a number of years. But eventually, he says that she wanted to get married, and he knew that even though it had been years since he had married, he had been married twice, and both marriages ended up in divorce. And so he said that, they just sat down and had a long talk about it. And they decided to go their separate ways at the end of the day, because she knew that she did want to marry and have children. Billy didn't say he was totally against marriage. He just said that he felt like he wasn't in a good place during their dating, to where I guess his second divorce was still fresh. Now, he and Christy, although they divorced, they are good friends. They are good friends. I watched some show. Because, see, I'm not into fashion and clothes and designer, this, that, and the other. That's just not me. And so, but I know she's a supermodel. And I must have been watching the show for someone else, but Christy came out first. And I don't even know who I was looking at it for, because after Christy's segment went off, I was like, I am not in anything. I'm not interested in anything that Christy has made a name for, but she's got my utmost respect. Because the host, was chatting her up a bit, and, they have to talk about, Billy Joel being her daughter's father, and she's like, yes, blah, blah, blah. And then the host all of a sudden tried to low-key ask her something that, could be salacious or, Christy stopped her right there, and she was like, no, you're just never going to get me to say anything bad about Billy. When she said that, I thought I was hearing, but not necessarily listening. But this is when hearing comes in hand. I don't know what I was in the middle of doing, but when I heard her say, you'll never get me to say anything bad against Billy, because like I said, I can't even remember what the host asked. The host question wasn't what struck me. What got to me was the fact that Christy let him know that you can talk all day, but You're not going to get me to say anything bad against Billy. And they, as far as I can tell, I guess they're still pretty good friends. They were friends enough that she didn't really care for that Carolyn lady because she still feels like Billy and she were seeing each other, even if it was at the tail end of their marriage. My thing with that is, okay, Kristen, you may feel that way, but now you were married when you started seeing your second husband. So, y'all, if Billy was seeing that lady, he wasn't doing any more than you were at the time. So anyway, but then after that ends up, that relationship ends, he starts to date this, I think they said she was some sort of a journalist, news lady named Trish Bergen or something. He was with her for a while also. And he did ask her to marry him. But it came down to she wanted to get married, but she did not want to live in the house where he and Christy had lived their whole marriage. And she was like, well, I'm just not going to live in that house. She wanted him to buy her another house and this. And although Billy may have been able to afford to do it, he didn't see, he just didn't do it. He just, no. So, but they did remain friends. I think Christy, I don't know, Chris didn't like her either. You didn't say why. She really didn't have a reason for not liking her, but I don't think they got along. But they ended up getting a divorce, but Billy stayed in touch with her as well. I don't know about Carolyn, but I know he stayed in touch with Trish after they broke up for a while. He knew that they had married, that Trish did get married, and she has 3 children, or that's what she had when this book was written. So then he moves on, and he starts to see a young lady named Katie Brown. Why do I feel like I've seen something? Seems like it used to be a Katie Brown lady, and she used to be on I don't know if HGTV was on at this time, but looked like she was the one that did crafty stuff. And I guess it would be along the lines of carpentry. I don't think she, chopped trees down or anything, but I think she might have built working benches, or she had her little, I don't know why I thought I saw that somewhere, but this Katie Brown was in culinary school when she met Billy. At a concert, at one of his concerts. She was there with her friends. Now, they didn't talk that night, but eventually, somewhere along the way, she somehow got his number, or he got hers one, and they eventually were over the phone talking, and they eventually ended up dating, and then he marries her. Now, hold on. Okay, I'm back. Now, at this point in Billy and Christy's lives, they had gone through whatever they went through, and they were okay. They remained good friends, like I said. So much so that when Billy introduced Christy to Katie, they got along. They got along so well that when Billy did marry her, Christy helped plan the wedding. All of that was all fine, well, and good. But here's the kicker with that marriage. At the time of the marriage, Katie was 22. Billy was 43. He's like 21 years older than her. And I think that was probably his shortest marriage. But at the end of it all, he that was an amicable divorce. So although he had been married 3 times and 3 times divorced those first 2 marriages, first to Frank's sister Elizabeth and then to Christy Brinkley, they ended up divorced, but it was bad for a minute. But like I said, Christy came back. Now, with regard to Katie and Christy both had one other thing in common besides being married to Billy Joel. Neither one of them cared for that lady, Trisha Bergen, but it really didn't go into detail as to why. And seems like nobody but Billy liked his first wife, Elizabeth. Even people Billy never dated, but they met Elizabeth and all started out all fine, well, and good, but it always ended up some sort of chaos or disagreements, and they can't stand each other, or they just don't associate or deal with each other. I don't know what in the world was going on with Elizabeth. But all it said was that she came from a pretty large family. She was intelligent, and apparently so was her brother. One of their brothers actually was in one of Billy Joel's bands, when he was first out there trying to make a name for himself, and they ended up having to let him go because he had gotten strung out on drugs, and eventually he ended up dying from drug abuse. But yeah, I don't know what it was about that Trish lady that Katie and Christy didn't like. But yeah, when that marriage ended, it was an amicable divorce. I think both of them probably knew that it wouldn't last, and they probably know that age played a bigger factor than anything else in their marriage. There are no signs of either one of them straying from the marriage. It's just that you don't want the same things at 43 that you do at 22 or vice versa. So they went on and they got a divorce. And that wraps up this part of part 3 of the Billy Joel book. I think it's 2 more chapters left. I don't know. I have to go back and see. But I'll hopefully have that one up within the next, I'll say 2 weeks. Put it like that, because I'm still working on the Lauren Kessler book. I told you about another video, Finding Life in the Land of Alzheimer's. One daughter's hopeful story. So that's what I plan to be working on for the next couple of weeks, those 2 videos. And I hope what I'm saying about Billy Joel is making sense to you all. This book, when you get to chapters 11 and 12, they lay everything out on the line about this manager's mismanaging Billy's money. It can be a little bit overwhelming just reading all of that. But in the end, as much as he's gone through, what with the alcohol and Christy feeling like she had to threaten not to allow Billy to see their daughter, I think Billy said that he really did. I think those 4 years when he had to go back out on the road after all that came to light about the manager, he said she was 8 when they finally got a divorce, he and Christy, and that it took him a minute to reestablish the type of relationship he knew he should have had, had he been allowed to stay home more than he did. But anyway, this concludes this video for Real Guys subscribers. Thank you so much for being subscribed to the channel. I would not be here if it were not for you all. Visitors, please feel free to join us. The door is always open, and everyone, please do not forget to like, share, comment respectfully, and by all means, have your notification bells not only turned on, but I need them set to all. Why? So anytime YouTube decides to throw me a bone and put one of my videos out there, you'll know every time I post a video, be it on this channel, The Book Connection, or Ms. Music. And so in the meantime, book connectors and music lovers as well, remember this: as long as there are books around, there is, and music to listen to, there is always something to read and rock out to. And until we read and rock out again, book connectors and music lovers all around, have a blessed and safe rest of the weekend. Enjoy your work week and be safe. God bless.